We're about a third of the way done with the MLB season, a little bit over, and it's officially June. So let's share our thoughts on the Pittsburgh Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. My name is Ethan Smith. You can find me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Gary's back for this Monday edition of Locked On Pirates. Was having a good time golfing last week, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt to leave him alone for a week. You know, sometimes you got to leave Gary alone and let him do his own thing for a week. Gary, how are you doing now that we're already in the month of June? This year's just flying by.
It is, man. And it just needs to quit raining every weekend. It really does. It's really getting old. So, but
yeah, no, that would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how quickly the year's flown, but I mean, we're going to talk about where we think they are. So I'll let you prompt me.
Yeah, and I'm also hoping it doesn't rain this weekend because I'll be at the Pirates-Twins game this Saturday because I think I'm just making it a thing to be at all the free shirt Saturday games. So I'll be there.
I'll be there Saturday too.
Rain.
So
I hope it doesn't rain again because I've been to one game this year where there was not inclement weather, and that would be nice to not have to deal with that again. And who knows where the Pirates will be by then? They obviously play the Dodgers and then the Twins going into this week. And this is a team right now, Gary, that currently sits at 27-32. And a lot of people have kind of like shunned that and said they're never going to get back to 500 and all of these other things. And they're going to struggle to get back to that point or win 76 games and like all this other stuff. There's a lot of time left, ton of time left to figure this all out. And for a Pirates team as well, that's 27-32, I go back and harp on something that you said to me earlier this season about the importance of winning games and how close the National League is going to be to each other and the difference between 78 and 84 wins. 78 wins, you're obviously out of the playoffs. 84 wins right now in the current structure of the National League and how the wild card looks, you're probably there.
Yep.
I mean, this team, for me, and I'll just share my thoughts and then hand it to you, it almost feels like they're a losing streak from being out of contention and a winning streak from being right smack dab in the middle of the wild card all the way through September. That's how this team feels to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of how the final record goes depends on really what they do from this point through mid-July.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think if they're floating around 500, I think they probably make a few moves. I think the pitching staff is good enough that they see value in putting a little bit more backing behind it and seeing if they can't make a wild card run this year. If they don't do that, you know, they'll just deal off the veterans like Chapman and whoever else that they can, Perez, and move on from there as a good young team looking towards next year. That's what we're going to look at this year, one way or another.
Yeah, and I agree. And I've also had it in my head for a while that I always thought that 2025 was going to be more of the year, quote unquote, anyways, because you'll have a full year of Skeens. You're getting another full year of Jones, hopefully. Oviedo will be coming back. Rodriguez, who still has a lot to prove, but will be coming back as well. And then you also hope that a lot of these bullpen arms that we talked about, like Ryan Borucki and Dowry Moretta, will be back. I think a lot of people in Pirates land have forgotten that Dowry Moretta even exists, and he'll be back at some point next season and was an integral part of this bullpen last year. And it's an interesting team as well because it almost feels like, and I joked about this the other day, that Tigers doubleheader was the perfect encapsulation of what this team is at this current moment. They're a team that can look absolutely god-awful the one game, and then they could look like a World Series contender the next. And folks, that's just baseball, and that's just how it works.
That's 500 baseball anyway. That's
that's what
they've done in Toronto too.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, you go back to that Toronto series. I mean, you really hope that G1 Bay can catch that ball in the first game. He doesn't. Also, want to throw out a lot of kudos to the bullpen in that game because they looked a lot better than they had recently. And really, throughout that entire series against Toronto over the weekend, they looked like a good group. And that's a group that I've been mentioning to people for a while that I get the question every day, and I'm sure you do too. When does this bullpen get fixed? What do we do about it? We were asking the same questions about the offense a month ago. The offense isn't a perfect thing right now, but it's definitely a lot better than it was before, I would assume. And when you keep looking at it too, you wrote a great piece over at Steel City Pirates. Everybody needs to go check out about a sense of urgency. And a lot of people, I think, get that verbiage confused when they bring it up. I think that they get sense of urgency means you have to do something right now. It has to be done June 3rd, 2024 at 8 o'clock in the morning so that whoever wants to talk about it can talk about it and the team can get ready for the Dodgers on Tuesday. It's not how baseball works. And we know what things they need, right? They need a first baseman. They need an outfielder. They need middle relief help. I mean, how many teams outside of the Rockies, the Marlins, and the White Sox, and I guess the A's know where they're standing a month and a half away from the trade deadline right now?
well, that's the biggest problem as far as why there isn't availability out there. The other thing is really they need left-handed power. That's what they're missing most. I mean, you can talk about the positions, but the reason we need a first baseman is not because Rowdy Tellez can't handle playing the position. He's done fine over there. It's just you need a left-hander that can hit for power. And you had him and Cruz and Sawinski all sputter to start this season. So that has to be replaced. And if it doesn't fix itself, then you're going to have to acquire it. That's the stuff I don't see on the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, somebody I'd be interested in is like Lamont Wade Jr. from the Giants, but the Giants don't know that they're out of it yet. The Giants are in the same position the Pirates are. In fact, they're in better position. They're actually in the wild card right now. So why would they trade him to us? Yeah. Like, you have to think about the position of everybody in the league. Now's not the time for that. If you have internal options, pull the trigger.
Yeah.
They did. Henry's back already.
Yeah, and Henry will be back for the series on Tuesday. I wrote a piece on that right away at Steel City Pirates. Obviously, through the time that he had in that month, he was pretty much there for exactly a month. I'm pretty sure he was sent down May 3rd, comes up June 4th, so we'll consider it a month. Brought the strikeouts down, home runs were back, OPS was back, whiff rate was down. A lot of things were good for Davis. But again, like you just mentioned, Henry's a righty. It doesn't really fix that problem that they currently have. And I think it's very interesting too, because I do understand that Pirates fans are frustrated. I'm frustrated. Trust me, I'd love to be talking about this team in a more positive light right now. I mean, there are positives to talk about. Hayes has come back and looked pretty good. Obviously was very unlucky in that game yesterday. There's still things to like about this team right now. There's things to dislike. But as you always mention to me, that's how you're going to feel when you're a 500 team. Look at the Steelers, for instance, the last couple of years when they're 9-8. I'm sure there's things you've absolutely loved about the Pittsburgh Steelers at times, and there's probably things we've all hated about the Steelers at times. And guess what? They were 9-8 or 10-7, right around that threshold. And 5 games being 27-32 is not all that much. I don't think people understand that at this current moment, Gary, 5 games under 500 is not insurmountable whatsoever. They could clear that in a week and a half's time if they found a way to get on a win streak.
They could,
and that's all it really takes.
That's kind of something we haven't seen since the very beginning of the season, though. Win streak. That's what we need to see out of them. A win streak. We talk about them being a 500 team. Well, it's disingenuous. They're not a 500 team right now. They're under 500. They're on pace for what they did last year, pretty much. That's not what you want. You want improvement this year. So you want them to push. They should push. With this rotation, they owe it to themselves to push. And I think you're seeing them make moves with more urgency. I didn't expect Henry Davis back already. I thought they'd be much more careful with him as far as like making sure this was the last time they called him up. They adjusted their timeline on Nick Gonzalez. They adjusted their timeline on Paul Skeens. They certainly adjusted their timeline on Jarrett Jones. So they kind of put themselves in this position to where it looks like it should be better already. They made the rotation look like this with some of their moves. So urgency was there for that. I'm not 100% sure why we're questioning why it wouldn't be there to complement that. Like it's just not the time for anything to happen.
No.
You can't go out and force the issue and force somebody to trade somebody they think they need. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think an interesting talking point to add to that is a lot of people saw what San Diego did with Miami, getting Luis Ariz, and that's just not that rarely ever happens where a trade like that comes to fruition in the early part of the year, especially for a player like Ariz who can be kind of a game changer in your lineup depending on what Luis Ariz you're getting as far as his contact skills. But now that we've shared our thoughts on it, I think it's time we let the fans of this show and probably your show. I noticed a lot of names when I was looking through these that listen to the Pirates Fan Forum and the Locked On Pirates podcast. So we'll go through these, and then Gary and I will share our thoughts on it here in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Supply House. Shop Supply House for all of your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical product needs at www.supplyhouse.com, because you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online, and their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. You can shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every single time. And don't forget to also join Supply House's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, which is always nice, free shipping, which is also always nice, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Don't forget, check out Locked On Sports Today. They're going to be talking all about the NBA Finals with the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics, and the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, of course, with the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. Good luck with those flights in between games, Edmonton and Florida. That's going to probably be a little fun. So I kind of sent out a bat signal to everybody who listens to this show and just asked a simple question. The Pirates are 27-32. What are your thoughts on the team right now as we enter the first full series of June, which will be tomorrow against the Dodgers? We'll use some comments on tomorrow's show. Well, it's tomorrow's show. So let's go ahead and start with Mitchell Nagy, who says, keep hanging around and see how things play out. They're a hot streak away from being a playoff team. If that happens and they add a bat and or bullpen piece, things could get fun. If they stay around where they are or get worse, they'll be sellers for the 6th straight season. What are your thoughts on that?
I could see some scenarios in which they might be sellers anyway, almost just to move some scrap out of the way that didn't quite work out. Like you might find a buyer for a Michael A. Taylor you know, somebody that can afford to just have a defender only sitting on their bench. You might find a buyer for an Alika Williams type, you know. Rowdy Tellez, if some miracle happens and he actually hits a little bit at his price tag, they'd probably be smart to just keep him at that point.
Yeah.
But you could see him being moved. Aroldis Chapman is a guy that maybe he's just too unsteady. Who knows? Maybe you do think to move him. Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, if he gets healthy. You know, you might want to move some of them just because you don't need them. Like if Marco Gonzalez were to somehow be able to pitch this year, which they claim that he might, that's a guy you might potentially just be able to move. Where's he going to go? Where would you put him in this rotation right now?
You can't find a spot for him, I don't really think. I mean,
is he better than Priester? Yeah. But like if let's say Martin Perez is healthy, well, one of them can go.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think it's interesting that he brings up I brought it up earlier, the hot streak away from being a playoff team. I mean, it does feel that way. But as you mentioned earlier, we just haven't seen it since the literal first week of the season. That was the last time that we saw it. And this team is a very different team than it was in the first week of the season. Let's remember that Michael A. Taylor was batting like .415 in the first week of the season and is not doing that anymore. I know that's a random thing to bring up, but it's still relevant. Dave Thomas, who's another fun listener of this show, really need things to click together for a while. So I noticed a lot of you guys were continuing the theme of kind of saying things need to continue to click for a while and hot streaks. They could really use a first base bat. Saw that a lot too. Or an outfield bat, also a bullpen arm. Starting pitching is getting it done. More than anything, they need the vets to produce. That really cures all ills at this point. So, yeah, it's very interesting, too, that when you look at the free agent additions that Cherington made this offseason, Chapman has had his ups and downs, but if you go and look at his numbers, especially in the month of May, and if you go also read my 5 up, 5 down piece, you'd actually be kind of shocked that he wasn't as terrible as everybody was making it out to seem that he was. Now, I'm not saying that he's been over the top good, but he's not been as nearly as bad as everybody's making it out to be. Rowdy Tellez, we already know that how that one's gone. And then you look at some of the other ones. Perez has looked good in stints. He's on the IL right now. Had a rough May. Gonzalez is on the IL right now, but that was an acquisition via a trade. Olivares has had his moments. He's been a useful guy in the outfield at times, but it overall hasn't been that great of a free agent class from Cherington this time around.
No, it hasn't been. I mean, talking about the overall need and urgency to see them get on some kind of a little bit of a streak, well, you certainly have the starting rotation to do that. You know, 4 out of every 5 games, you're going to see a starter that you think could win a ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Like over the course of a month and a half, provided they stay healthy. I can't sit here and tell you that I think that team should finish under 500. They should win more games than they lose in that stretch with that rotation, even with halfway competent hitting and a halfway competent bullpen. They should be able to do that. So I think that's in there. I don't know when it's going to come. This is a tough month competition-wise, but I like the way they play against tough competition, sometimes better than the way they play against teams that they should beat.
I mean, keep in mind, folks, right now that they have a winning record on the season against the Orioles and the Braves. And actually, I think the Phillies, too, if you throw the Phillies series in there, they still have a winning record against those 3 teams. So, and historically, over the last couple of years, they've actually played pretty well against the Dodgers. So don't be all that scared about that series that you might be. And that actually moves into a very interesting one from Nick. I can never pronounce Nick's last name. Nick, I'm sorry, dude. I feel somewhat confident because of the rotation and the division being pretty bunched up, but man, you need to start winning more of these winnable games. That's another one that I was seeing a lot, that there have been a good bit of games that the Pirates have had this season where you look back on them and you say, how did we lose that game? Obviously, recency bias will go back to that and say the San Francisco Giants games. But I do think, and I heard Jim say this on your guys' show, that a lot of people forget that the Giants gave the Pirates a gift in that first game too, because the Pirates were down 6-2 in the bottom of the ninth against a guy who hadn't had a blown save since September, and they've managed to come back and win that game. Now, that doesn't warrant losing the next two whatsoever, especially with Jones and Skeens on the mound and the way they pitched. But I do understand the frustration too with a lot of these games. Like even Quinn Priester should probably be the most frustrated of all of them, because I think on the radio they said that his run support is 3.0012 in his on his time this season. So it hasn't been great for him there either. But that's also the nature of baseball. You're going to have games that you look at as winnable that you're just not going to come out on the right side for.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn Priester's got nobody to blame but himself most of the time. You know, he's not getting through that order that third time clean, or even the second time fully clean. So I think he's got his own demons to conquer before he starts casting his gaze at the offense. But yeah, listen, man.
Gary's about to spit the gospel here. All right, guys, just get ready for this one. When you hear "listen, man" from Gary, he's about to say some very important stuff. So make sure you pin this for yourselves.
There's a better team in there. There is. They're just not showing up right now, and some really important components haven't in particular. And these are the two biggest ones to me. Jack Sawinski and Oneil Cruz both not providing left-handed home runs has killed this team. It's what they're doing against right-handed pitching, which is still the majority in Major League Baseball, that is killing this team. That's why they're under 500, because they're not playing like a 500 team against right-handed pitching. Until that changes, like one of those players, both of those players, or Rowdy Tellez shocks everyone and hits a bunch of home runs, or Brian Reynolds goes on a tear left-handed, they're in trouble against right-handed pitching. You can't win in this league like that. That's the problem. That's what needs addressed urgently, and I just don't know how that happens, short of one of those guys coming back up and doing it.
Yeah, and the options are limited as far as everything that's available outside of the organization too. Now, obviously, from now until that point, something could come up and you could go get those guys. Because I've also, before we move to the final segment and get to more of these, I saw a lot of people over the weekend talking about bringing in Vlad Guerrero Jr. I don't really think that solves anything. I'm just being completely honest. I mean, I think Vlad is a great player. I think that he brings a power element to the game. I think he's fine. How long do you have him here? Are you really going to go trade a massive package of your prospects to have Vlad Guerrero here for a year and a half?
He's hit 4 home runs this year.
Yeah, he's not even really hitting the ball that crazy either as far as power is concerned. He's getting on base at a massive clip.
And Toronto just said they didn't want to trade him. So
yeah, and I sat there and saw people say that, and I'm just like, look deeper into that. Don't be like Ethan and trade for Jazz Chisholm on MLB The Show. Okay. Even though I did it, and we're tied 1-1 against the Diamondbacks in the wild card. So let it happen. MLB The Show, very realistic baseball game. Folks, we're going to get to more of your thoughts on the Pittsburgh Pirates right now in our final part of Locked On Pirates Day here on Monday, June 3rd. We'll be right back. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Make sure you use that code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And with PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. If you think Mitch Keller or Paul Skeens or Jared Jones is going to go higher on strikeouts, you can do that. If you think Brian Reynolds is going to have more than 1.5 total bases on a game, You can do that. If you think O'Neal Cruz is going to stretch out a double that he didn't need to stretch out in the top of the 9th inning against the Toronto Blue Jays and get over 1.5 total bases, you can do that. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, obviously, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. And for my gaming folks, there's always action on PrizePicks, and this is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball and hockey are winding down and baseball is coming into full swing. Make sure to try out esports this month, because for every Wednesday and Saturday in the month of June, if your lineup doesn't win, you'll get your entry fee back. You can choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and so much more. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. And just remember, it's as easy as picking more, picking less. It's that easy at PrizePicks. Got to love PrizePicks. I hope you guys hear this. You definitely heard that. All right, there we go. We're having fun. We're having fun on today's show. Why not? It's June 1st. The weather's getting warmer. As Gary said, it hopefully won't rain this weekend, so I can actually not have to let my shirt dry outside this time around from the last free shirt giveaway, using it as a umbrella of sorts. Mike Nicastro is here. If you guys don't know Mike, Mike Up Sports does Sick Pod Steelers, does some fun work. He left a little fun thing here. I can make a legitimate case that 4 of their starting pitchers are/will be worthy of an all-star selection. I know Skeens has only been here a few weeks, but with that considered, 5 games under 500 is simply unacceptable. I'll let you start on that one.
I mean, one of them's only been here for a couple weeks. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the way you want to make it. Sure, fine. I get it. I just don't think this unit's been together for that long. I'm looking forward to what it can do in the next little stretch here. But, I mean, I think Paul Skeen's first outing was, 4 innings? The next one was like 5. He just got 6 the other day. I think you're kind of seeing him start to deliver a little bit longer in his games and have more effect on the outcome of them. Mm-hmm. So really that's kind of just getting started. And I think at the same time, you're kind of watching Jared Jones taking the other direction a little bit. He's going to start to struggle a little bit. The league's going to start to show him something a little different now. Keller's been great, and they have won an awful lot of his games. He's 7-1. Starting pitchers don't get records like that anymore.
No.
So, clearly they're taking advantage of his outings. And Bailey Falter, they're letting him down. You know, he's pitched great, and they just haven't come through. Yeah, it's unacceptable. I think that's kind of the point. We've talked about the improvements that they've made. They're just words. You just say the word unacceptable. What does that mean? What am I going to do?
Yeah, there's nothing we really can do about it.
It's unacceptable. O'Neal Cruz hasn't hit as many home runs as he should. It's unacceptable. Yeah. Jack Sawinski reverted and got sent to the minors. It's unacceptable that Henry Davis, in his second professional year of, crapped out and had to come
and
back.
If you really look with Henry Davis, too, now that you brought that up, you really look at it, and I was making this argument about Cruz earlier this year. Davis hasn't even played the amount of a full season yet, folks. Just keep that in mind. I know he was here last year for a little bit, but he hasn't even played the equivalent of a full MLB season yet. So pump your horses on the Henry Davis's garbage train that I've seen a lot of people be on. And this is one that I like because this upcoming thought process, because I think it's interesting that when you in hindsight and you remove everything, right? Remove Tellez not hitting the ball, remove injuries, remove everything, right? Michael Kosman says, record-wise, they're about where I expected. Honestly, with everything that happened from injuries and regression, this isn't too bad of a record. The bullpen is shaky and the hitting is still too inconsistent, but if they fix that, they're on the right track. I mean, yeah, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And I found it interesting that record-wise about where he expected, I think it's interesting that the expectation for Michael was for them to be 5 games under 500 going into June. And I don't know.
Everybody that has a team that is in this 500 conversation can say that exact same sentence that was just uttered
Yep.
about this Pirates club, and it always ends with if they can fix this, because it's always that, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a team like this, it's really about what gets done in the next month and a half and what management does with that. If they go on a 10-game losing streak and drop 15 games under 500, don't expect them to do much more than offshore these veterans and bring up kids and, maybe even trade directly for AAA prospects that they think they can plug right in here and there. And if they compete in this next month and a half and they get themselves back into that conversation, which even a couple games under 500 would be, expect them to try to make some additions. I think the pitching will warrant that.
Yeah. And if I didn't catch any of these, by the way, or some of your thoughts on these folks, I will probably have a story up later today or at some point on Steel City Pirates going through all these and sharing my thoughts on it. And one thing that I also wanted to highlight too, going into this month, is me and Gary usually at the beginning of the month kind of take a look at the month. You're going to learn some things about the Pirates you haven't even learned yet, because they play 2 teams in their division this month that they haven't even played yet, in the St. Louis Cardinals and the Cincinnati Reds. So we don't even know how they're going to perform against those teams. And there you go. And right now, so far in the NL Central, go look back at their record in the NL Central, and it's not all that bad. It's not as bad as it might come out and look to be and feel, but they've actually done quite well in the division this year. And if they could find a way, as a lot of you mentioned, to just go on a little win streak, folks, you could have a completely different feeling about this team by Friday, depending on how this Dodgers series goes. That's just the state of the season. I mean, you could really go from either being swept by the Dodgers and feeling like the season's over, or sweeping the Dodgers and you're 2 games under 500.
Yeah,
That's
I was
really
wondering.
the state of the team.
I was wondering if there's a way we could just kind of borrow Tucupita Marcano back for just this series, because
just one series.
Yeah, he loves hitting against the Dodgers. So
yes, just one. Hey, and the Pirates broadcast, folks, to end the show off, has made it painfully clear before this Dodgers series that the Pirates pitching staff has the best strikeout rate against Shohei Ohtani in baseball. They have made that painfully clear on every commercial that they've had on Sportsnet Pittsburgh promoting this game. Every single time. So if you want to go to PrizePicks or FanDuel and go bet a Shohei Ohtani homer in PNC Park, just go ahead and do it. You'll win one of the 3 days, I'm sure. And also for the folks that did ask me as well, no, he is not pitching. So don't expect to see two-way Shohei at PNC Park. Gary, you have 5 thoughts at 5 today. Fan forum on Thursday. What's on tap this week for all the folks that love your content?
Yeah, fan forum. We're gonna let the week play tell us what to talk about. I don't even know yet, but it'll just be Jim and I think, this week. I'm going to be at the game Saturday, so I'm looking forward to that. Twins are a cool matchup. I don't think I've ever seen the Twins in person somehow. So yeah. I kind of wanted to make sure I did. And that t-shirt's pretty cool. My wife wants it. So
yeah, it is a cool t-shirt. And I will say, as far as you not seeing the Twins play in person, I have seen the Twins play in Minnesota when I was at a journalism conference against the Tampa Bay Rays. Very random game that I went to back in the day, where I wore Pirate stuff, and now chirp and say I think it's dumb that people wear their favorite team stuff when their favorite team isn't playing there. So yeah, I've been that person before. Folks, follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Follow Gary at GaryMo2007. Check out 5 Thoughts at 5 later today on Steel City Pirates. Check out my Henry Davis story at Steel City Pirates for that breaking news. You can find Locked On Pirates on the Locked On Podcast Network on YouTube and all of your audio platforms, free and available to you every Monday through Friday. That's Gary. I'm Ethan. We'll see you on the flip side.